afternoon. At the tone, Pacific Daylight Time will be 5, 4, and 30 seconds.
What? Oh my God, we're having an earthquake. Wait a minute. Hold on. Can you feel that? Yes, I sure can. Okay, this is interesting. There go the lights. Oh.
I am Kathleen Aston, and we are here today with Susie Tannehill, reporting for Epicenter, an oral history project for the 30th anniversary of the Loma Prieta earthquake. And we are at the community television station in Santa Cruz, and I'm going to start today by asking you how long you've lived here in Santa Cruz.
I moved here in 1973. I used to teach school in Southern California, and I moved the day after school let out.
Wow. And what did you move to the area for?
I used to teach elementary school, and then I became a jeweler, and I could make as much money making jewelry as I could teaching elementary school.
Wow.
And then I thought I'd move to Paradise, and I had.
Yeah. And can you describe what you were doing during the earthquake?
Can I start with the day?
Please.
So I decided that I needed to get back into teaching because I wanted to have benefits and retirement and health care. So I started substitute teaching so people would know me. So the day of the earthquake, I was teaching kindergarten at De La Viega School. And after I taught there, substitute teaching, I went to Artisans because I was a jeweler at Artisans on Pacific Avenue. And I put a bunch of jewelry in the cases. And I thought, well, should I walk around and look? No, I better go home. So I left around 4:30. And I got home, and my son had a dentist appointment in Scotts Valley, and my daughter had a dance lesson in Felton. And then the earthquake happened. And my husband was upstairs taking a shower, and he just sat down in the bathtub and said, I'll wait it out. My son was taking the trash out, and all our windows opened out, and I had a lot of stained glass and stuff that just were falling out the windows, and he thought, why is Mom throwing things out the window? My daughter was on the couch. She couldn't get up. I was in the kitchen in a doorway, and I kept getting slammed into the side of the door. And I had always liked earthquakes, and I thought they were fun. But this one, I thought, if this lasts much longer, my house will shake down. My house was built in 1927. So that's what we were doing during the earthquake.
Wow. Can you describe the aftermath, after that initial moment, how you all reacted?
Yes, we all went outside. I remember my husband had 2 different shoes on. And I immediately called my mom to let her know we were okay. We could call out, but my brother could not call in. He had to call someone in Nevada who was able to call me to find out if I was okay. So we spent the night in our house. Unfortunately, the electricity was out, and it had happened just before dark, so there was broken glass everywhere. All the cabinets had opened. Things had fallen out of the cabinets into the drawers, and then the drawers shut. And the television in my bedroom was on a bookshelf, fell onto the bed. So if we had been on the bed, it would have been very bad. So we all slept in the house at night. And then we just cleaned up in the morning.
Can you talk about any of the sort of emotional, physical, or spiritual impacts to yourself because of the earthquake?
No spiritual. Emotional, it was just a big shock. At the time, I did not know. At the time it happened, because the electricity went off, I didn't know how local it was. So I thought maybe it was just a Felton earthquake. So I was contemplating taking my daughter to dance and taking my son to the dentist. I thought, they probably don't have electricity either. As I didn't have any battery-powered radio and didn't think to go out to my car and turn it on. So I had no idea how large it was and how extensive it was. We hadn't had too much really major damage to our house. A wall had fallen down into the street, retaining wall, not of the house, but of a retaining wall. And like I said, almost everything in the house had broken and windows cracked and everything. Also, I was in Artisans, and that shut down, of course, and then went into the pavilions. So we were in pavilions for a long, long time after that.
It sounds like you've talked a little bit about this so far, but would you say you understood the significance of this earthquake while it was happening?
Not while it was happening at all. I thought it was local. I thought it might be local. And since I couldn't get any news, it wasn't until probably the next day that I saw, we heard how bad it was and about the bridge collapsing in Oakland and the woman who died at the coffee roasting company and Pacific Avenue being shut down. All the chimneys were broken in Santa Cruz. Ours was cracked. Didn't fall, but we knocked it down afterwards to make sure it didn't fall into the house, but fell out. So financially, I knew the city, that was really going to hurt the city that way. Mm-hmm. And in my area, I live in Felton, only one house I saw was destroyed. But I don't know how much minor damage was done to other houses. I'd see on the news later about houses that went off their foundations and the people still had to pay their mortgage, even though they had no house. So I felt we were lucky. My house is built, like I said, in 1927 with real 2x4s, real redwood 2x4s, and it was bolted to the foundation, so it swayed. I have a 2-story house. It swayed, but it didn't go anywhere.
And you talked about, you learned in the subsequent days about damage and things elsewhere. Can you talk a little bit about how you were getting your information about what was happening to the city or what was happening to the San Francisco Bay Area?
Mostly from the radio, and then we could go out, we could drive out and get newspapers. And eventually the electricity came back on and we could watch television, and then we could see the extent of what had happened. Most of the filming was in San Francisco, mm-hmm. on the buildings up there and on the bridge that collapsed. But I know Watsonville got hurt really badly, and lots of people were sleeping in their cars and sleeping in tents and things like that. But the Cooper House, that was horrible that they had to knock that down because that was the most beautiful building in Santa Cruz.
Yeah. Another way we have about thinking about this is, can you describe the ways that the earthquake impacted your life moving forward?
Well, there was a lot of stuff to repair. The insurance company paid for a lot of stuff. I got a small business loan, I think, to make repairs. The Artisans had closed, like I said, but we were in a pavilion, and we actually did better that Christmas than we'd ever done because people were so supportive of the people who had lost their businesses. Actually, afterwards, we were allowed to go back in with hard hats and go into Artisans and get stuff out. And the potato, I forgot what it was called, there was a place that sold baked potatoes right next to Artisans. And what people don't realize when they see the photos is how bad everything smelled because all the food had rotted. Oh. So we went in and got out everything that wasn't broken out of Artisans and loaded it up. We got permission. We had to sign waivers and got all my jewelry out. And so economically, I know it was just really bad and people lost their houses. And Halloween that year, you know, you took the kids out and it looked really creepy because there were a lot of things that were, you know, the broken chimneys and the things that were taped off with "Don't come in here" areas, and the chain link fence on Pacific Avenue.
Did anyone like try to enhance that, like play into, you know, decorating like alongside those things, or was it just that was the landscape that you guys were?
That was the landscape we saw. I didn't see anybody take advantage of it. I remember Lily Wong's had up their Halloween display, and it was up for over a year afterwards because they never got around to, you know, I don't know what happened with the building, if it had to be sold or whatever happened, but there were Halloween stuff up on Pacific Avenue for months and months afterwards.
Wow.
And a friend of mine had a leather store, Robert's Leather, and he was able to get his leather out. I know Bookshop Santa Cruz had volunteers going in and carrying out books. So it was a real community effort, and I really felt proud of the town that everybody pulled together to help everyone.
Yeah, and that kind of leads into our next question, which is if you could describe how you think the earthquake impacted the Santa Cruz community.
For immediately after, it really brought us together. Marty Wormhout was on the news all the time. The president came. I saw them walking down Pacific Avenue. Everybody really wanted to help everyone. And that was a really good feeling. Afterwards, I still think some of that feeling still is happening today. I know there's people on Thurber who, the night that it happened, had a big potluck, and everybody came and brought food because you couldn't necessarily cook in your own house. And they, I think still to this day, have a potluck on the 17th every year. So nobody who went through it forgets it.
Yeah. Do you take any particular precautions against natural disasters now, and what would they be?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I lived through the floods of 82, 83 also, which actually were bigger deal to us in Felton because so many roads were closed. Lompico was closed for months. I don't live in Lompico, but it was closed for months. My road was covered in mud. There was a back way out. Eventually, anytime it rained, everybody was afraid. So I carry emergency stuff in my car at all times. Tennis shoes, sweatshirt, flashlight, tools, some food. I always have extra canned food and non-perishable food in my house, and water. All bookshelves are bolted to the wall after the one fell on my bed with the television set. So yes, no heavy things above the bed. We're very, very cautious about that. And my daughter too, who lived through both the floods and the earthquake, she always keeps enough emergency stuff in her house. She has 4 children for like several weeks because she's lived through these things and she knows how it can be. And everybody always thinks, oh, you're like a prepper. And she goes, no, I've lived through this stuff. I know how it can be.
And where does she live now?
She lives in San Jose.
She lives in San Jose. And how old were your daughter and your son at the time of the earthquake?
My daughter was 12 and my son was 14.
14. Is your son similarly prepared, or?
He lives in Iowa now.
Oh,
so
different.
he probably just has to worry about tornadoes.
Yeah, different. Yeah. What would you say it's like to be reflecting on your experience after 30 years?
I can remember it so well. It's one of those things like you remember if you were old enough where you were when Kennedy was killed or when 9/11 happened. But it was a bigger deal because it was actually happened to us. And I remember so well standing in the doorway in the kitchen and being banged into the wall, into the door frame. and having a big bruise on my arm, and just thinking if it happens much longer, the house is going to fall down. And it would have. I mean, I don't know, a minute longer and everything would have shaken loose. So.
Yeah. So that brings us to our final question, which is there anything that you'd like to add that we didn't cover? I know you brought an artifact with you.
Yes. Like I said, I was a jeweler and artisan, so yeah, made jewelry. And also I used to do craft fairs, and I would trade for things. And I don't ever do blown glass, so I would trade jewelry for blown glass. And I had beautiful blown glass and stained glass collections. And this is one that I saved. And all the beautiful glass I just put in a box, and I thought, I'm going to make a stained glass window out of it later. And I do stained glass also, but I haven't gotten around to it because it's not a high priority. But I thought, you know, I'll just make an earthquake window and have it as an art piece.
Do you think that, I know that as one response to the earthquake, there were these art installations that went up and down Pacific Avenue. And I know when I first was living and working here, I was working at the Annie Glass store in the new Cooper House. And so people would come in and talk about their relationship to the Cooper House and the community and that history of the earthquake. And I'm curious if you think that it had a particular impact on artists, or what kind of impact it might have had on artists.
I think it did. I made earthquake earrings afterwards, which were little discs with like a zigzag cutout, like an earthquake fault line, and sold those for a while at the Artisans afterwards. They sold very well, but I stopped making them. You know, I didn't want to keep going with earthquake stuff. Cooper House was just so tragic because it had the most beautiful stained glass inside at the candy store. Bookshop Santa Cruz, everybody loved Bookshop Santa Cruz. You go through Cafe Pergolesi was at the back. Coffee Roasting Company, I didn't happen to ever go in there, but the different stores, I mean, I still feel like a lot of us say, oh, you know, where Lily Wong's used to be, or the bookshop used to be, or Cooper House used to be, because it was so much a part of our lives. And I was going down there like once a week. I was working in Artisans. I was also in the Center Street Gallery, which is in the Art Center. And I had been there, so I was downtown all the time. So I was really connected with downtown. The artists that were down there, I mean the musical artists that were down there. And I think it had a profound effect on everybody. I know one potter who had her stuff all packed up because she'd just been to a craft fair, so none of her things were lost. But everybody else in Artisans, I mean, my jewelry wasn't hurt because it's little and it's in a case, but so many people's things, you know, all their things were lost.
Well, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. If there's nothing else that you would like to add, then I think that we are done today.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.